Okay. So okay, we are trying to create the setup, a file for setting up this database. So from because everything is in basic db.py, I'm going to import db and persons from there. So what is this db and person? Is this db in line 29 and this person class? I've imported it into the setup. So now I can just go ahead and create the database table. So I can say db dot create all. So with this command now, it will create all the tables I've defined in my database. Currently, I only define one table. If I had more than one tables defined, running that command now, whenever I run this file, we dot create all, it will create all the tables, create the database and the tables. Now, for an example, we can say Dave. Dave is a person. I will now say equal to, since the person is of the person class, right? So I'll create person. And whenever we're creating an instance of this person's class, we need to supply the name, the email, and the age. So I will just put the name as a string, the email, let me call it dave@email.com. Let's say he's 30 years old. Okay, here now I've created an instance of a person. Let me copy it and create another person. Let me just call this one Ru, which will be root, root@email.com. Root is 25. Okay, so as my file is going now, at line 5 and line 6, I've created Dave, I've created person. Now look, I did not specify an ID for Dave, I did not specify an ID for person. But in our table, we have a colon for ID. Now, because it's a primary key and it's an integer ID, the database will be creating it for us. So as we add entries, it will create it. Here, we've created these two. Now, let's check that if they have an ID. So we could then say print Dave.id, and then we'll see what it will happen. We expect it to say none because at this point, there is no ID given for Dave, but Dave has a name, an email, and an age. Then I'll see print ru.id. At this point too, none, just to show that there is no ID. Okay. Now, even though I've created these two people, I've not yet put them in the database. The database has been created. I created two people. I've not put them there. So to put them in the database, we'll then have db.session dot add. I can do this. I can do dot add and say add um, Dave. I can do this to add only Dave, but if I want to add Dave and Frank together, since there are two, I can have add all. And when you say add all, it's going to be a list. And the first I will be adding is Dave and then Ru. Remember, Dave and Ru are just like variables. So I'm going to add them like this. When I do this, they will be added to the database. And then after adding them to the database, I can say something like db. I have to say db.session dot commit. This is when you now save it to the database. Okay. So here you can add or you do db.session dot add and you add one by one. You do Dave db.session dot add ROU. So these are two methods you can use. Either you're using this one or you're using these two one by one. Okay, because we're just trying to, now that we've committed it to the database, we can then repeat this, right? We now repeat this again, and you will see that it's going to have an ID 1 and it's going to have an ID 2. So even though you created Dave and Ru in line 5 and 6, because they've not entered into the database, the ID has not been created. It's in the database that the ID will be created. Okay. So now let's run this file and see what happens. So I'll save it and then run. Now I need to migrate into this. Okay, my files in the meantime have been saved in the wrong location. So I need to move them to the correct place. Yeah. So I had this database and I had a template. It was busy saving inside of templates instead of being in this database folder. So I just moved it there. I'll delete this template so it doesn't cause such confusion. Okay. Okay. Let me go back. So it's now in the correct location and now running. So I'm having an error, which we now need to try to fix. Okay. What is the error? db dot create all. Okay, it wants me to put it in a width block. So this typically means that I attempted to use a functionality that needed the current application. To solve this, set up an application context with app.app context. So I'm going to do that before attempting to create the database. And I can then go ahead and put all of this under that width block. And then that simply means I need to import app, save it, and then try it again. Good. So it needed me to use this statement with app.app context, right? And then I perform what I'm performing in the context of the application. Now, if you look closely, let's go through what happened. Okay, good. So like we expected, the first print statement is in line 11. And you can see we asked it to print the ID of Dave. It said none. We expected none and we got none. We asked you to print the ID for Aru, which is for root. We expected none and also we got none because at that point in time they've not been put in the database, so they do not have an ID. Then we went ahead, but the databases have been created first before we created these people and did that. Then we attempted to add them. No error, it went well. After adding them, we committed it, we saved it. Then here, when we now say print Dave and print ru.id, you could now see we have their ID. This one has an ID of 1, this one has an ID of 2, because they have now been committed into the database. Now, if we go to our file structure and look, you will find out that there is now a new folder here called instance. This new folder has sites.db, which when you come here, that is what we named our database site.db. So you can see the database has been formed there. You can't really see it in this editor. Even if I open it anywhere, it's not even open. Okay. But you can see that the database was created automatically in a folder called instance. And at the same time, there's a folder called PyCatch. This one is there to kind of optimize the performance. Both of them came automatically, right? As we ran this DB setup. Or now that we've run this file, if we run it again, if we run the file again, we might get an error because the database has already been created. However, if you need to run this file again, or let's just try it and see. Okay, yeah. It actually even unlike what I thought, it recognized the database and added this Dave and Aru a second time, right? And now, why is that happening? Because when we go into our database, we find out that name, we did not set it to be unique. We did not set email to be unique. So when we ran the file a second time, it still added Dave and Aru and added Dave as ID number 3, ID number 4. So the ID is unique, but then the name now is repeated. If we have set these colons to be maybe unique, like I said earlier, if you set name as unique, then only one row can have that name. At the time of running it a second time, we would have had an error, right? Because you're trying to create a name that already exists. But now, because those conditions are not set, it's adding them into our database.
It's in the they don't my MTN network now. Now what I can see.
So that's it for creating the database and adding our first 2 items. Even though we did it twice, it entered. So there are 4 items in our database. If you look at it from this place, you see, but they are just the same items repeated because we did not set the database to maybe be unique on any of those fields. So it accepted them. But there are 4 elements having 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, now let's perform some crude on our database. So if you look at what we say we are going to do, we have set up a database now by configuring our application. We created a database model. which is this person, and then we use the other file db setup to set up the database and add some entries. Now we are going to just do some crude operations, which is create, read, update, and delete. Now to do that, I'll use a new file, which I'll just call it db crude .py. So for CRUD this thing, and still we are going to import from basic db import why is it underlining it? From basic db we are going to be importing db. We'll import our app and we will import person. Okay, but why is it underlining it? Okay, from, I didn't spell from where. Okay, so that's it. So we've imported what we need again, as we did in the other file where we set it up. Now we are going to be having our with statement again, so that within the context of this application, we are going to perform these operations. So now we'll add another person. No, I'm good that way. FR should be equal to another person. This person, his name is Fred. His email is fred@email.com, and he is 40 years old. So why are we doing this person? We're actually trying to work on create in terms of crude. So we are creating. So when you create this person or any new person you want to add to your database, you can then, the next thing to do is to add. We add now. It's only one, so we'll just add FR. Let me make it small later so it match. So that's how we create the person, but we need to commit it. We created the person, we committed it. Now we are going to read. Read. How do we read from the database? We'll say all, we'll just name a variable, all person should be equal to person dot query dot all. So this will return all the people in the database, all the people in the database. And then the next thing we're gonna do is print all underscore persons. Now let's perform a little operation in the Python Python in the terminal, just to check what it will look like when you print the people we have in our database. So enter our Python shell. in our Python shell, we are going to import. We'll repeat this statement here. Everything okay, no error. We'll take the with app, enter, tab, and now we are going to say all equal. I'll perform this query. Then okay, everything. Then I say print. Oh, so I queried everybody in the database. Then now I want to print it and see what it looks like. Now here we have person 1, person 2, person 3, and person 4. Remember, when we try to set up, we ran it twice. So Dave and Aruyu appeared twice. But what I'm just trying to check now is how is it printing? We've not yet defined how we should print. It's just telling us, oh, there's person 1, person 2, because the name of the model is person, which is like saying the class. The class is person. So it's just printing person 1, but we don't know who person 1 is, who person 2, person 3 is. Now, we need to improve our model. Improving our model, we are going to write our str method for our class. If you remember when we talked about OOP, we had the str and REP to define how we want it to print. We can do the REP or str, right, method for the class. So when we print it, what do we want to see? So we are going to return a formatted string. We'll just say name. We'll put the person's name, email. We'll put the person's email, and age. We'll put the person's age. So we'll return here self.name, self.email, and we now have self.age. So what I'm trying to say is anytime we print an instance of this class, we want it to print like this. Instead of saying person 1, person 2, person 3, it should print a little description. And now let's go to the Python shell and try it out. At this point in time, because we have saved the file, made an update, I'll come out of the shell and go in again. So when I go in again, I want to import all of this again. Then I'll use this same statement with app context in the shell just to see how. And then I'm going to do like this line to read all of them and print. So I hit enter 2 times, and then I print all underscore person, and let's see how it is. It's still person 1, person 2. Why is it not reflecting the change? Okay, maybe I should restart the database. So to do that, I will just delete the instance of the database. I've deleted the database now. Yeah, this is permanent. It's busy. Okay, sorry. I need to close this. Then I delete it. It's gone. So now with the updated file, let me recreate the database. And to recreate it, all I need to do is to run this setup. Now, when I run this setup, it's going to have only one div and one array, except I run it twice. So I can just say Python db setup.py. So it's created again. Now we go into the Python shell and import these ones I want to use. And create the app context. Within the app context, I'm going to query that all equal to person dot query dot all, and then I print all. Two person one, person two. Okay, maybe I use the REPR. I don't know why that's doing. Save it. Let's see. Okay, let's try it again. So I'll do the imports again. And then what's the problem? Okay, copy. So let me run this query. Okay, good. So he wanted me to use the REPR instead of str. Now, because I have implemented the REPR method, I'm now able to see more description, the way I interpreted the method or the way I wrote the method. I should put the name, the email, and the age. So what you see, the name of the first person is David, his email is this, and the age. The second person is Ruth, the email is that, and the age. So these two are the people we have in our database. In fact, we should put it in form like in another bracket so that it will not be confusing. Okay, that won't take effect except I restart it. Now, because when you look at it, you just see David, comma, email, comma, age, comma, and then by the time it comes to root, there is nothing separating it. But the way I've done it now, I've put it in another bracket. So when you look at it, you see they'll be separated with brackets. Okay. So I just wanted us to ensure that we have a good way of viewing persons instead of just seeing person one, person two. So I'll come out of the shell and continue with our main class here, which is where we are talking about the CRUD operation, and we are in read. So to read from it, yes, you create a variable, read query the database get all, you can print it. That's for a typical read operation. from the database. But if I want to grab by an ID, if I know the ID of a particular person, I can say person, I can also say first person or person with ID 1. I can run this query to just get that person. Dot query dot get. I'll pass in his ID. That's if you know the ID, you can query it like this. And then you can go ahead to print person 1. So you grab the person and print it. You can print attributes of this person also from the database, person 1 dot email. You can get that. Okay. You can also apply filters when reading from the database. So I could say person root. I can say equal to person dot query dot filter by. All these things are kind of similar to SQL statement, but we're not actually writing the SQL statement itself. It's easier. We can say name equal to root. So this one now is going to grab everybody that their name is equal to root, and you print it. It's going to print a list. Can print person root. It should be a list of items. Then you can, if it's more than one, you can pick one or two of the people from the list. Now, that's for reading. To update, we can go ahead and update. Let's just take this statement, person 1 again. Let's get person 1. And then run an update by saying person 1. So you just change a parameter. Person 1 dot age is equal to, when we first created person 1, that's the first person with ID 1, which is Dave. The age is 30. So now let's just change his age to 35. 35. So the age is changed. But when you change our update, you now need to do db.session dot add person 1, and then commit. Now also we can delete somebody, or we can delete an entry, which is CRUD. The last one is delete. So let's say person underscore 2. Let's go and delete the second person. We could just use the same query to just get the person. But now the ID should be 2. Then we'll do db.session dot delete. So we grab the person and we delete that person. This will delete it from the table. db.session dot add db.session dot commit. Yeah. So now we can check that is deleted and say all persons. All person, we can check it again. dot query dot all, and then we go and print it and see. There should be two persons when we print this now. Okay, let's save this file. So what are we doing in the file? We created a new person for create. We showed how we can read. We can read all of them, or you can read one by ID, or you can read by filter. We updated one. We got the person, made an update to his age. We committed it, and then we deleted, and then saved. So let's go and run it. So I go into my terminal, run. Okay. So what are we seeing? At first, after, seems like I have a mistake, but let's see. After creating Fred, he read all person, and then that was the first place we printed. So if you watch, you can see where he printed. There are now three people. One, two, which is Dave, Ruth, and Fred. Three. Okay, here is a kind of warning also, and it says legacy API warning. The query.get method is considered legacy as of the 1x series of SQL Alchemy and becomes legacy construct in 2.0. This method is now available as session.get. So what they are trying to tell me now is that this query.get should be session.get, right? They have deprecated it since the release of 2.0. Now, it's still working, but in future it might not work. So whenever you're doing this code, instead of using query, you can use session. Good. So after that warning, it then printed the person one, and you can see person one email. He printed it. Now we come to person root. And it's giving me another warning. Select person.id as person ID, person name as person. From person, where person name equal. Okay, I actually don't understand this one. I need to look into it more. So when I went to this one now, I didn't get this one because I think there's a challenge with this query. Okay, so but when we got to the one of updates, it's repeated the same message that that query should be updated, and it was able to get. Okay, I didn't print anything, but I updated it to 35. So when you finally deleted and printed all of them, you can see that only Dave and Fred remain because we deleted Ruth. Now the age of Fred was updated to 35, but there seems to be some error here, which I'm going to look into. Okay, I think we'll stop here for today. Someone said his head is full. I will stop here. The recording will be available. You can look at it so that maybe next class will start from